What is up, you guys? Another week means another episode of Pickswise Playbook presented by Superbook Sports. I'm Lauren Jabara. That's Tank Williams. That's Jared Smith. And guys, we only have 2 weeks left in the regular season. Tank, can you believe how quickly this season's flown by? It's been so much fun.
It's, I know, right? And we have like extra weeks in the NFL season now for the past couple of years where it seems to go by just as fast. But how was your holiday?
It was really nice. How was your holiday? It was good?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I'm anxious to get back on my workout routine. It's been a little fat over here, but
Oh my gosh. I told my brothers that the time between Christmas and New Year's is like a figment of the imagination. It actually doesn't exist unless you're an NFL or college football fan because that's what's going on right now. Jared, how was
right?
your holiday weekend?
Good.
I'm sure we all enjoyed the sweets just as much as each other throughout this whole last week, but time to get back into NFL grind.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't really use the holidays as an excuse for sweets. It's every day. So I don't eat any. I don't eat any more or less sweets during the holiday week. It's usually pretty consistent
Jared's
throughout
just
the
like, hey,
course
that's just what
of
I
the
do,
season.
baby. That's just what I
I
do.
mean, listen. I don't get paid per pound. I get paid per bet. So we're good here. We're good. We'll keep the train moving.
Well, hopefully we can have some sweet picks this week to kind of satisfy our
Oh,
sugar craving at this point. You like that transition? Before we get into
yeah.
some of the games, NFL season betting stats. The unders are 131 and 105. They're hitting at a 55.5% rate this season. We're seeing it come a little bit more towards 50% as the season's gone on. Best against the spread teams, the Bengals 12 and 3 against the spread, Giants 11 and 4, Lions 10 and 5, and 49ers also 10 and 5 against the spread. The Bucks are a putrid 3-11 and 1 ATS, and the Chiefs are also a putrid 4-10 and 1 against the spread. So something to keep in mind when we talk about that Kansas City Chiefs game this weekend. Before we get into the games, Tank, I'm coming to you first because some of the biggest news in the NFL comes after week 16 and a Denver Broncos ugly loss yet again. The firing of Nathaniel Hackett. Your thoughts on that decision coming out of Denver?
I mean, that was ugly. Uh, I mean, it's not too
Yeah.
surprising just based on how the team has performed the entire season. And I think it started off week one with him mismanaging the clock, and then it seems like he could just never get the momentum going. But just to end it that way, where you're playing against a really bad Los Angeles Rams team that were losing a lot of pieces, like Matthew Stafford's out, Cup is out, Aaron Donald's out. You know what I'm saying? That offensive line has been a mess the entire year, and then they dominate you. I mean, utterly dominated them in every phase of the game. And then you got guys fighting on the sidelines. You got guys fighting after the game. He lost the locker room. He lost total control of the team. He lost faith in the organization. And so that's why he ended up catching that L and getting fired. And so, I mean, that was surprising to me. But also, hey, I can't let your team go sliding. Like, I no longer can call them Detroit. Like, they're either Etoile or
Ooh.
Detroit because there's no D in Detroit after the way the Carolina Panthers ran for over 250 yards in the first half. That was unbelievable to me.
I know. To be honest, they made the Panthers and Sam Darnold look like a Super Bowl contender, especially that run game. I don't know what they were doing, but they need to tighten up this week against the Bears, which brings me into my next question, Jared. And I think I know your thoughts on this one. Are the Packers going to sneak into the playoffs? And for Jared, they're not just going to sneak into the playoffs. Tell us about your little outside bet that you told me about this morning on Let's
Okay.
Bet.
Wow, we're gonna fire right out of the gate strong here with this one, huh?
I like it.
Well, listen, I
Mhm.
I think it's a numbers thing, and at this time of the year, there's not a lot of upside to the futures market. Most of the contenders, the value has been sucked out of the top of the market. That being said, on the NFC side, we don't really know who the contenders are, right? Like the Niners, backup
Mhm.
quarterback. The Vikings, kind of fraudulent. The Eagles, their quarterback is hurt. The Dallas Cowboys, they've got cough it up Prescott at quarterback. So there's a lot of issues, I think, at the top of the NFC. So if you were going to ask me, okay, this is the road to the Super Bowl. Let's just say, let's live in a hypothetical world here and say that the Packers make the playoffs as the 7th seed. The Vikings are the 2 seed. They face Minnesota in the wild card round. Then they face Philly in the divisional round. We don't know what their quarterback situation will be at that point. Yeah, I'd take Aaron Rodgers in those two games. And then if you're giving me the bet was a Super Bowl ticket at 85-1. If you're giving me a Super Bowl 85-1 ticket that's in the NFC Championship game, yeah, I feel like I can make some money there. So it's not a bet that I think I'm going to win. I don't think the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl, but it is a bet that I think has a chance to significantly move up in value over the next 4 weeks. And I like holding those tickets in my back pocket. Gives me flexibility. Oh, by the way, I also have an Eagles NFC Championship ticket in my back pocket as well. So again, you're starting to see a portfolio being built. We did it on the AFC side. We've got Kansas City and Cincinnati for Super Bowl tickets. Now we're starting to build the portfolio on the NFC side. And I don't like a lot of the NFC contenders to run the table. So if the matchups favor me, the one matchup that scares me is the Niners. But if it's Packers Vikings in the wild card round, you're telling me that Aaron Rodgers isn't gonna be able to stroll into Minnesota and get a win? I mean, I could absolutely see that scenario playing out. So yeah, just the numbers game right now. I think the Packers, if they win this week, I think they're going to beat your Lions next week, and that's their ticket to the playoffs.
See, I know we don't want to drag this intro in too long, but I will say this, and why I really love your point is that we've been talking about the parity in the NFL all season long.
Yeah.
And there's any team in the NFL, in the NFC, that can do something similar to what we saw from the Cincinnati Bengals last year, that can lean on a strong defense, has enough firepower on offense now. If Christian Watson can stay healthy along with Romeo Dobbs, Alan Lazard, Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield, A.J. Dillon being a hammer, and the MVP quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, like, hey, I can see a path. So, hey, I like where you're going with that one.
Everyone's counting them out. I mean, no one thinks they can win the Super Bowl. Yeah, you called them the biggest frauds, I think, in the league a couple weeks ago.
Hey, you remember I was talking about them earlier this season? I mean, we kept saying, like, hey.
No one liked them. Yeah. No one liked them. And I get it, but no one liked the Bengals this time last year either. And, for example, in 2007, in 2007, no one liked the Giants either. And then they went to Green Bay, and Tom Coughlin, froze his nose off. And then they went to, so the funny things happen this time of year. I think it's more about the number than the team. 85-1 with an MVP quarterback in a wide open NFC. Yeah, I'll take a little sprinkle there.
Crazier things have happened, and we're going to get into all that 100%. Right now. Week 17, key games. Another big question, and we'll answer this for you throughout the games. Who's going to win the NFC South? It is still up in the air at this point. So we'll get into that when we talk about the Bucs, when we talk about the Panthers. First of all, let's start it out in Philadelphia. The Saints taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at this point. The Eagles laying a tutty. That total is set at 44. The Saints coming off of their second of back-to-back wins, 17-10 over the Browns. The Eagles lost 40-34 over the Cowboys with Gardner Minshew under center. The Saints had the momentum against the Browns, but I don't think that's going to happen again against the Eagles. They only have 6 wins on the season. Not a single one against a team that's above 500. And even with Minshew under center, they still put up 34 points, the Eagles did, against one of the best defenses in the league, in the Cowboys. Tank, I know we talked last week about it didn't really matter in that one if the Eagles won or lost because there was no Jalen Hurts in that game. What did you see from Minshew, and do you think that they can take advantage of the Saints here at home laying a touchdown?
I don't want to bury the lead. Do I think they can take advantage of the Saints? Yeah, I think the Eagles have a little bit more to play for than the Saints, even though the Saints are still in playoff contention. They have slim odds to make it. I believe the win of the NFC South is going to come out of whoever wins that game between Tampa Bay and Carolina. That's just the way that I'm looking at it. I could be wrong, but that's just the way I'm looking at that outcome. But when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they had a lot of things to take away from that game against the Dallas Cowboys that lost in a positive manner. Gardner Minshew played well. Devontae Smith played his tail off. A.J. Brown was still who he was. They had some key turnovers, whether it's from Minshew or from Miles Sanders late in the game that caused them to lose it. But at the same time, you're playing against a really good team in your division and you had a chance to win. So I think that bodes well for the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. And I think that will probably load them with like a little bit of that dog heading into this New Orleans game, saying like, okay, this is a game we need to make sure we win to secure the number 1 seed in the NFC and take any questions of it going down to the last week of the season. And so from that standpoint, I feel like the Philadelphia Eagles should win this game. I don't know how much energy the Saints are going to come out with. I can see a path to the Eagles defense playing really well, getting a lot of pressure on Andy Dalton, causing some turnovers, and then the game getting out of hand. Or the or Saints can play the Eagles close, and it can come down to the wire. So I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. I'll probably stay away from this, and the only thing I feel pretty confident in is that the Eagles should win this game.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts at this point is considered day to day with that shoulder sprain. We don't know if he's going to be under center or not. I feel like it doesn't matter. I feel like Minshew, Jared can also take advantage too. They're averaging 30 points per game at home this season. Would you lay the 7 with the Eagles?
Yeah, and it's come off the 7 a little bit. It's actually touched 7 a couple times and then got bought back down to 6.5 both times. So it looks like it's not one of those situations where everybody's lining up to bet Philly. There is a little bit of pushback in the market for New Orleans, and that makes sense. Again, once it nestles up against one of those key numbers, like my dog was nestling up against me last night in bed, that's usually when you see some of the buyback there. The Eagles, listen, I think Philly is a really good team. I think they are a much better team than maybe we give them credit for because of the quarterback situation being in flux right now. Gardner Minshew was fantastic. He was the number 1 quarterback in efficiency grading if you take away the turnovers, which I know, take away the 2 interceptions, and he was great. But if you take away those 2 mistakes, he was arguably the best quarterback of the week when it comes to the nerd numbers I look at here. So I think Minshew is going to be fine if it is him. My guess is it's Minshew. They don't need a whole lot offensively to win this game because their defense is playing lights out. They lead the NFL in sacks. They're 1 sack shy of a franchise record. They have 4 players on their defensive line with double-digit sacks and at least 40 pressures this year. Reddick, Hargrave, Sweat, and Graham. I mean, they just get after you up front. And then, oh, by the way, their one weakness against the run, since they acquired Linval Joseph in Week 11, they've gone from 32nd in rushing success rate allowed to now 5th. In the last 5 weeks. So they've shored up their one weak link on the defensive line, which was stopping the run. So what do you do against this Philly defense? The pass rush is relentless, and now they can stop the run. And on the other side of the ball, they've got, I think, the best offensive line in the league, but the injury to Lane Johnson makes things a little bit more interesting. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, he's one of the best tackles in the league, and they lose him for the rest of the regular season. We'll see about the postseason. But they will win this game this week. Good teaser spot on the Eagles. You go from 7-1. If it does push through the 7.5, I think the teaser spot on Philly becomes more valuable from 7.5 to 1.5 because you push it through that secondary key number there of 7. So I think Philly would be the bet for me this week at 6.5. At 7, I'd be a little less intrigued. At 7.5, it would only be a teaser for me.
The Eagles are 6-1 against the spread at home this season, and they covered in 4 of their last 5 games against the Saints. Something to keep in mind when you are betting the Eagles possibly in the game like this. Let's take it to Washington, the nation's capital. The Browns are coming on into town. The Commanders laying 2 points here. That total set at 40.5. The Browns are just absolutely woeful this season. They've barely had any offense against the aforementioned Saints in Week 16. And the Commanders, on the other hand, were busy at blowing a game to the 49ers. They've lost 3 in a row now. Taylor Heineke was pulled in the 4th quarter of that game. But both teams kind of have QB issues because Deshaun Watson has probably been worse than what people expected for him in his return. He only has a 57.7% completion rate, averaging 175.8 passing yards per game. I don't know. I feel like things don't get easier now going up against a Commanders defense for the Browns. The Commanders need to win to make the postseason tank. In a spot like this, being a former player, do you think the Commanders come out and give it 150% and take advantage, mostly on the defensive side? Because I don't think Cleveland's going to really be able to get anything going.
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders need some help, but if they win out, their chances of making the playoffs is decent, I guess. I look at this game from this macro level. The Cleveland Browns are out of the playoff race right now. They had a perfect setup last week where you're going against a dome team in the New Orleans Saints in like the coldest temperatures, I believe, on the slate last week. I mean, it was frigid. I watched that game mostly covering it, and that was the coldest game by far. And for the Browns to drop the ball against a dome team and the Saints in their home stadium, I mean, that was disappointing. That just kind of shows you where the Browns are right now. And I believe when you're facing a Washington Commander team, especially on defense that has Chase Young back, their strong suit is stopping the run. And so I really don't see a recipe for success for the Cleveland Browns. I think this is a game. And then when you flip it over, too, before I forget, we know that Carson Wentz is going to be the quarterback over Taylor Heineke this week. but they're going to lean on the run game. They're going to lean on Brian Robinson mostly, and then Antonio Gibson. Cleveland Browns are one of the worst rush defenses in the league, so I'd expect Brian Robinson to get a heavy, and that should be their path to success. So when I look at this at Commanders -2 and looking at the over/under, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really sure how many points are going to be scored in this one, but I feel pretty comfortable in the Commanders should cover the -2. So if I was going to take a bet on this one, it'd probably be Commanders -2.
The Commanders are 4-0 against the spread against teams with a losing record, Jared. Would you support that trend too and tank and say the Commanders are going to cover here?
Yeah, no bet for me here. But if I had to pick this, absolutely, I would not be betting on Deshaun Watson to go on the road and get a win, which is basically what you're betting. I did, although that being said, I did just see the line tick down to 2, from 2.5 to 2 about an hour or two ago. So there's someone out there in the market who's really smart over at Superbook who just bet the Browns +2.5. So keep that in mind. Again, at this stage of the season, and the motivational angles will absolutely come to fruition. They will be a big part of the discussion. But in the NFL, the bettors shape the market very quickly, and a lot of times that value gets sucked out, and the market actually takes that into account when creating the lines and shaping the lines. So I think it's hard to use the motivational angles in the NFL as your end all be all for the handicaps. Like, obviously Washington has to win. They need to get into the playoffs. I think the line bakes that in to a sense, especially after the line gets dropped Sunday night. We're here taping on a Wednesday, and the sharp money has already eaten their chunks out of where they think the angles really lie. So I would caution bettors out there that are basing their bet solely on, well, this team has to win, so that this is the bet to make. I think there's more nuance here. And I do think Deshaun Watson, he hasn't been good, but he hasn't played in 2 years. Like, it's going to take some time. My guess is there is going to be a week, maybe it's not this week, maybe it's next season, where the light bulb comes back on for him. Maybe it is this week, but very hard to gauge when that's going to happen. Let's just leave it at this. When that light bulb does come on, the Browns are probably going to win that game, and they're probably going to massively exceed odds maker expectations, because right now you're seeing the numbers skew a little bit against Watson in this Browns offense, because they have not been good, and they did not look good last week against a good Saints defense. So I think this is a tough game to cap. I think obviously the market's kind of begging you to take the Commanders at under a field goal, but I think there's better spots on the board this week based on what we've seen. I mean, do you trust Carson Wentz the favorite?
Never.
I don't know if I do.
No, I would not, to be honest. A line move that's been really interesting, though, has been the 49ers in Las Vegas. Let's head on out to Jared's hometown right now. It was earlier today and yesterday, the Niners laying 5.5. Now the Niners are laying 9. That total is set at 43. It's ticked down a little bit from 44.5. I don't know. The Niners want to keep rising in the NFC standings. The Raiders officially eliminated from playoff contention. They don't really have much to play for at this point. And I know Derek Carr struggled, Tank, which is why you're saying that he might be benched this week in this game, which is probably why we could see a little bit of this line movement. But with the Niners, the way that they're playing defensively, offensively, Mr. Irrelevant making himself relevant in the NFL this season, 8-game winning streak. Can you see that continuing, or is 9 points maybe a little bit too much to lay with the maybe not knowing if Derek Carr is going to be starting under center or not?
Yeah, so just touching on the Derek Carr news, I mean, I saw a tweet earlier this morning that said that the Raiders have been meeting for the past couple of days to determine if they want to sit Derek Carr for this game. He has a big number of guaranteed money if he were to get injured in these last couple of weeks, and they're trying to determine if they want him to be the quarterback of the future. So that's why he may sit. And in that case, that's why you see a line move from in the mid-5s all the way to where we are right now as 49ers -9. I mean, I think with that news being there, like, it's probably a no touch for me. I mean, I think the only thing that I wanted to play on this one possibly was the over, because I felt like I could see a path to Derek Carr and that offense getting going against the weakest spot of the 49ers defense, which is the secondary, and having a decent game from Devontae Adams. So I saw that path to the Raiders putting up some points, and then Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan doing what they do on offense, leaning on Christian McCaffrey, leaning on like the short, efficient pass game. George Kittle has been amazing the past couple of weeks, and then being able to generate enough points to get over that 44.5. So now it's 43. But now without having Derek Carr in the midst, this is probably just a a stay away from me just because there's a lot of uncertainty in regards to the motivation that the Raiders are going to play with now if they're benching their starting quarterback, and if the backup
Mhm.
quarterback, I believe, is Stidham, will be able to come in and move that offense as a fit. Well, I guess he kind of moves it in spurts as well, but just trying to imagine what that offense is going to look like with Derek Carr out of the mix this week.
Yeah, Jared, for you and the uncertainty, is this a stay away game for you, or are you maybe leaning the Niners here? I found a crazy stat that the Niners are 10-0 against the spread in their last 10 games played in January. So they're playing well when the games count, right? It's like the last 2 weeks of the season is pushing down the stretch. It is true. They're playing well when you really need to. Is this a game where you stay away from, where you don't really know if Derek Carr is playing or not, or do you kind of go all in on the 49ers here? Because I know you're already high on them earlier in the season.
Sure. I think, the move to Stidham, I think, is a pretty big downgrade from Derek Carr.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's the biggest downgrade from starter to backup in the league, but it's probably in the top 10. Stidham, we saw him in New England. Like it's not someone that I would want to bank on to cover a number against the Niners front that they have everything to play for. Like they absolutely need this game. Goes from 9.5 back to 9. So there was a little bit of buyback. It did touch 10 at a spot very briefly and then got bought back at one of the offshores. So again, you can kind of see like the market appetite at numbers that are pretty standard. My guess is this likely closes around 10 once the news from Derek Carr becomes confirmed. It is a very unique situation with him. I was trying to do some brief research during our pre-show period when I saw that number come out. So apparently, if this is so weird, Tank, you can tell me if this is like normal or not. If Derek Carr fails his physical in the spring, his contract becomes more guaranteed. That is a very unique situation. I don't know if that's normal or not. Yeah, because I guess that was written in. I guess that was written into his contract that if he's hurt, he gets more money. I don't know how that would come about. Again, I'm not a contract expert, a legal expert, but from my understanding, our pal Clef TA just tweeted this out about 10 minutes ago. Carr has $40 million in injury guarantees that becomes fully guaranteed if he can't pass a physical in the spring. So they might just want to wrap this dude in bubble wrap for the next 3 months and just pray that he doesn't get hurt, because I don't think the Raiders can afford that. And clearly, based off of this move in week 17, they are not very bullish on his future with the Raiders. So just a weird spot, and I wonder how that affects the rest of the locker room. The one nugget I'll give you, and this is going to become a thing over the next couple weeks, contract incentive, bonuses, milestones. Davante Adams is about 250 yards away from his career high in receiving yards, which is 1,553. He's currently at 1,290. So my guess is Davante's going to Jarrett and said, hey, bud, feed me the rock this week. That would be the one angle that I can give you that might have some value, that you might want Davante Adams. He might be going for that career high in receiving yards, which is, again, about 250 so yards away, and he's got 2 weeks to do it, which is very doable for him. That's really the only, actionable edge I can give you here, because the weird situation with Derek Carr just really muddies the waters in this game.
Yeah, it definitely does. We'll see how that line continues to move as more news comes out about that. And that will bring us into week 18 next week, when it's Jared's favorite week of the season. It becomes incentive bonuses. He loves that week. He loves betting props that week. It's his favorite week of the year.
Get that money, Tank.
Looking forward to Pickswise Playbook week 18
These guys don't know that's coming.
Yeah, there's a bunch of incentives. There's guys trying to hit metrics in the contract, and there's just guys trying to make it to the offseason in one piece.
That's true.
That's Jared's favorite week of the year. That
it is.
And I don't really even know. That probably.
No, honestly, Tank, last year, just a quick aside, last year, Tyler Lockett was 2 touchdowns away from $1 million bonus, and his 2 touchdown prop was 16-1. First half, bing, bang, boom, 2 touchdowns in the first half. It's just and then we saw after the season, we saw some mic'd up footage from the Bucs sideline, and Gronk was close to his incentives. Gronk just went up to Tom. He's like, hey, I need one more. It's arguably the most actionable information we'll get all year. Now, that being said, I don't know if there's as many as there were last year. Last year was a very good year for them. I'll have to dig. I haven't found a lot so far, but the one on Adams I think is noteworthy because, he wants that career high, I'm sure. First year in Vegas, wants to, prove to his bosses that the investment was a good one. Hey, my career high in receiving yards. So I would say Devontae Adams would be the one angle over the next couple of weeks with the Raiders if they do bench
And
Carr. That
honestly, the
might
Raiders
have
will. The Raiders should want him to get that record too, because you see the down year that
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers has had without Devontae Adams, and then you have
Yeah.
Adams come over here to Las Vegas and have his best year ever. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We'll be breaking all those down week 18, give a little preview of that one. Okay, let's head on out to Seattle because Jared's New York Jets are heading into town. This line is flipped completely. The Jets are now laying 1.5. That total is set at 43.5. The Jets have dropped 4 in a row now, 19-3 against the Jags last week. Jared, I'm sorry that they weren't able to score a touchdown. Zach Wilson in some deep doo-doo at this point of the season. Mike White back in the lineup this week against the Seahawks. But the Seahawks haven't really been much better. They're on a 3-game skid right now. They lost to the Chiefs in week 16. This game is a must-win for both sides. Everyone is going to be ready for this one. I'm actually really excited to see how both of these teams play. And we all love a revenge spot for our guy, Geno Smith, who spent the first 4 seasons of his career from 2013 to 2016 with the Jets. Mike White making his return after the last 2 weeks with the rib injury. Who do you think, Tank, is going to be hungrier in this spot? Can the Jets go on the road as road favorites and win in one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL?
I think both teams are going to be hungry. It's funny. Like, I have like a little thing where I kind of do my due diligence, and I call it like box score pimping, where I just go through all the box scores from the prior week and just jot down notes. And I have notes for the Seattle Seahawks, like Geno had 215 pass yards, a tub and a pick. Go through Walker having 26 carries, 107 yards. If I scroll to the Thursday night game, the only thing I have for the New York Jets is Strebler, 9 carries, 54 yards. Nothing else was noteworthy. Like, it was just ugly. Like, I didn't want to jot down any Zach Wilson stats. I mean, Bam Knight, I mean, he was basically non-existent. None of the wide receivers really did anything that was significant, like noteworthy. And so now that Mike White is back in the picture, it's like, okay, now we actually have a team. This should be a competitive game. And so now when you look at it from that standpoint, I don't know if the Jets should be favored on the road. I feel like they're a much better team with Mike White. I think that passing game is much more explosive. And when you have to focus on Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore and all these other guys, then that should open up some running lanes against a porous Seattle rush defense, which means Bam Knight should be able to get some totes and get some yardage against them. And on the flip side, Geno has to face a tough defense. Like, I mean, that's one thing we can say, even though the Jets offense has struggled while Mike White has been out, the defense has played well. I mean, they struggled a little bit against Trevor Lawrence and that Jacksonville Jaguars offense on Thursday Night Football. You know, Lawrence had 29 pass yards. He rushed for 50-something yards. And Etienne had 83 yards rushing, but he had 22 carries. So, I mean, they still hold up pretty well. And so I think when you look at this Jets offense, when you look at this Jets team, it's similar to the effect that Taylor Heineke has when you insert him into the lineup in Washington. It gives them like a little bit of a jolt of energy. But at the same time, I guess we can say that jolt of energy with Heineke, like it lasts for a little bit and just kind of fades away. I think it may stay there with Mike White just because he's a better player and the team has that identity that, hey, we can go out and win significant games with this guy. Whereas, like, if Zach Wilson's in there, they're like, man, damn, like, there's no way we can get by this team. And so I think with that being said, it should be a competitive game. I really don't know who wins. I think that we should possibly go over that 42.5. I know Jared likes to look at those key numbers. I think the Seattle Seahawks, even though they've struggled a little bit on offense, they have DK. I'm not sure if Tyler Lockett's going to be back. Maybe they score enough points to kind of push this because I feel like the New York Jets shouldn't have any issues scoring on Seattle. So maybe we go over, but more than anything else, this is kind of like a stay away and watch 2 competitive teams try to fight for their playoff lives.
Yeah, this game is really going to be interesting. Jets defense obviously is a huge story, and the fact that Mike White is back. But on the road, Jared, the Jets are only giving up 18 points per game this season, which is 3rd in the NFL. Do you think they can shut down a guy like Geno Smith and their offense that's been cooking? Because Seattle's defense that's really been letting them down a lot the last couple weeks.
I think the Jets defense is capable of shutting down any offense in the NFL. I honestly do. However, what we saw last week from Jacksonville was kind of a blueprint to how to at least have some success down against the Jets. And what I noticed when I watched that game was very quick rhythm passing in the flats, away from those star corners. So running the receivers deep, tight ends, running backs in the flats. It was Trevor Lawrence's second lowest ADOT of the season. He averaged about 4.5 yards average depth of target. And again, Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson pushed the ball down the field. Kirk, Jones, Ingram, they didn't do that at all against the Jets. It was all dink and dunk. And I think that's not easy to do because you have to be consistent down to down. You can't make the mistake. You can't hold. You can't have a penalty because then you get behind the sticks and then you can't throw a 5-yard out because you're at 3rd and 10. But I do think what Doug Peterson did was at least give teams a blueprint for how to have some down-to-down success against the Jets. Here's the only issue. Jacksonville is playing much better offensively, I think, right now than Seattle is. Geno Smith's numbers, and I've been his biggest fan all year. I love what this dude has done. It's been a fantastic story. But weeks 1 through 8, he was a top 5 quarterback EPA plus CPOE. Since week 9, he's at 10th. So it isn't a huge drop-off, but you're seeing a little bit of regression with his numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And he's committed a lot of turnover-worthy plays, 8 in the last 3 games, precisely, during this 3-game losing streak. The Jets, though, they do something that no one else can do. Very few teams can do. They're a top 10 pressure rate team and a bottom 5 blitz rate team. They get after you. The big uglies, deep, versatile, Lawson, Rankins, Q, Myers, Johnson. I mean, they have bodies that they can throw at you, and they don't have to commit extra guys in the box in order to generate pressure. And this is a Seahawks offensive line that is trending down. Their right tackle, Abraham Lucas, was hurt in the Chiefs game. Stone Forsythe came in, allowed 3 pressures, was called for a penalty. Gabe Jackson and Phil Haynes rotated at right guard. Neither of them were good, allowed a combined 6 pressures. The Jets' defensive line is going to get into this Seattle offensive line in this game. And I think it's going to be tough for Geno to operate as smoothly as he has in weeks prior. On the other side of the ball, the Seahawks don't blitz much defensively. They don't generate a ton of pressure. I don't know how much that's going to matter because the Jets' offensive line is in absolute shambles. They allowed 15 pressures against the Jaguars last Thursday. I know Zach Wilson looked bad, but he had dudes up in his grill all night long. 13 of those 15 pressures came from the right side. Center McGovern, right guard Herbig, right tackle Fant. 3 penalties also on that side. The left side's been holding up okay. So if you want to say that's the side you run to, Tomlinson and Dwayne Brown, really, the veteran, has done a really nice job solidifying the left side of the Jets offensive line. But Mike White hasn't played in a month. His ribs are probably still a little bit banged up. And I just don't trust the Jets offensive line to keep him upright in this game. I think that's why you've seen this total drop. It's interesting. The spread has gone significantly in favor of the Jets. We've seen about a 3-point move, but the total has dropped since Mike White was announced as the starter. And I think that's curious because I would have guessed the total would have gone up. You take Zach Wilson out and put Mike White in. So I'm not very bullish on the over in this game. I think both teams are going to struggle to move it. And I think whichever quarterback makes the fewest amount of mistakes, I think that team's going to win the game. I have no idea who's going to win it, honestly. I pray it's the Jets, but I have very little faith. And the nightmare of Geno Smith ending the Jets season keeps, entering my brain every night. But that's where I'm at with this game. I would lean Seattle as a home dog, and I would probably lean the under too.
Yeah, something if you like trends though, Jared, and you like your Jets. The Jets are 6-1 ATS in the last 7 following a loss, and the Seahawks 0-6 ATS in their last 6 games. So if those trends continue, your Jets are going to be winning against the spread here.
1 loss last week though.
Yeah, I know. One loss. Hey, you know what? It's okay. And we're moving into key divisional games now because for my Detroit Lions, this is do or die time for the team. They need to win the next 2 games. They need a couple other things to happen to make the postseason. The Bears heading on into Detroit. The Lions laying 6 points here. The Chicago Bears trying to spoil the party. They lost to the Bills last week in Week 16. That was their 8th consecutive loss. The Lions were the Panthers' prey on Christmas Eve. It was brutal to watch. They made Sam Darnold and Carolina look like Super Bowl contenders. They allowed 570 total yards, 300 plus on the ground. They're still 6-2 though in their last 8 games, and they know how much they need to win this game and the next game next week against the Packers. Tank, I know you said that now it's just Detroit instead of Detroit. Do you think they could put the capital D back in this one at home at Ford Field this week against a Chicago Bears team that has dropped 8 straight?
I mean, see, this is the thing. All right. So it's so easy to just have like this quick like visceral reaction to the information that you witnessed the week before and just say like, all right, I'm gonna just paint the picture with that. Understanding
Yeah,
that things change. We've seen a lot of NFL teams that get buried one week and you say, all right, they're done, and then they just end up bouncing back.
Yeah.
Green Bay Packers, perfect example. We thought they were dead to rights, and now somehow, some way, they're in the playoff race.
they've
So
resurrected.
I'm not gonna bury Detroit, even though I should. Because if there's one team that's one dimensional as hell, it's the Carolina Panthers. You know they're gonna run the damn ball. You actually been playing the run well going into this game, and then you let this team run for over 250 rush yards in the first half, which is unbelievable to me. And so
It's
now
gross.
you get to face a Chicago team that scored 30 points against you. You outscored them by 1 point, 61 total points in the first outing. You know Justin Fields is going to run the route, and I would argue that Justin Fields is going to be a more dynamic runner than those two running backs that you saw in Carolina, just based on a lot of times he has scripted runs, a lot of times he's dropping back to pass, and you're in coverage, and then he's just going to tuck the ball down and run. And so if you couldn't stop those running backs last week, I really don't know if they'll have an answer for Fields because they really didn't have an answer for him in the first outing. So, I mean, if anything, I'm pointing to the over at 52 and a half, even though I'm a little leery of this as well, because a lot of times I know we talked about it earlier in the season where I see like a big total in the first game. A lot of times the teams play each other totally different the next out, and I would expect this one to be more lower scoring. So that I just want to chase the points that we witnessed in the first outing? Probably not. I mean, so if there's any lean, it would be the over. Who's going to win this game? Obviously, Detroit has a lot more to play for, but like
Yeah.
Chicago, like they're trying to build momentum in the next year. It's a division rivalry. So there's nothing more that the Chicago Bears want is to prevent Detroit from making the playoffs. So in that instance, this is going to be a tight, closely fought game. So if anything, I have a lane to the over, even though I really don't want to chase, given that they had a total of 61 in the first outing, and I'm not sure if they can replicate that in this matchup.
I know the Lions offense, Jared, is not going to be their issue because they've been averaging 27.4 points per game during the last 8 games. The Bears have the worst total DVOA in the NFL. They're allowing 401.3 yards per game over the last 3 games. Do you think the Lions can
Wow.
cover 6 points, or do you think that this is a game where you kind of lean the Bears because it is a division rivalry?
So there's a few things here that are noteworthy. I'll give you the market update first, and then I'll get to my thoughts on the game. It does look like 6 is kind of the hovering point here.
Mm-hmm.
Look ahead was 7 last week, got bought down 5.5 at reopen Sunday, now 6 as we're taping this here on a Wednesday. The total has been an elevator straight up, 48.5, now sitting 52 through the
Crazy.
key number of 51, which besides 44, 51 is the other key total that we look at in the NFL, which is one of the most landed on totals in the league over the last decade or so. And the one thing you didn't mention is, the Bears are 32nd in EPA, DVOA. Lions are 31st. So this
Hey,
is
you know
bottom
what?
feeder
You
against
know
bottom
what?
feeder in
Well, you don't
fantasy.
know what kill you. You know what I mean?
That's true. I'll mention one more nugget, and it goes, and again, you guys are going to notice a theme in my handicapping style over the next 2 weeks. It becomes a lot less team and a lot more personal for a team like the Bears that doesn't have a lot of team goals left to accomplish. Justin
Yeah.
Fields is less than 200 rushing yards away from Lamar Jackson's single season rushing record for a quarterback, which is about 1,200-ish. He is over 1,000 yards rushing already this season. So if you want an angle on this game that maybe isn't baked into the line, Justin Fields is going to get that 1,200 yards. And I think the Bears are going to try to do everything possible to get him there, because that's a pretty nice accomplishment for a guy that was kind of written off at certain points during the Trubisky disaster and at other points during his Bears tenure. It's been a brief Bears tenure. But I think that's, again, at this stage of the year when the teams don't have anything to play for collectively, I guarantee you every guy, especially the offensive line for Chicago, wants to be on the team that had the biggest rushing season for any quarterback in the history of the NFL. So just something to keep in mind this week. There are other angles to attack with these games besides spread and total. I agree with Tank. The only way I would bet this game would be the over. No chance I'm betting the under in this game. But the total's at a point where You get one fluky red zone turnover, 1 4th-and-1 stop at the goal line, and it kind of kills your mojo there. So it's not like my best play of the week because I think the number makes it kind of devoid of any significant value.
Mm-hmm.
But Justin Fields is going to get his, and I think there's going to be points in this game. Let's just leave it there.
Points, 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 points. You love to see it. A game where maybe points will be scored, probably not as many, for sure not as many, as the Jaguars heading on into Houston. Everything's big after beating the Titans.
Well, look, the Texans played Dallas close, and it took a miracle for them to pull off that victory at the end in Jerry World. Then they played the Kansas City Chiefs, who we will all agree is one of the better teams
Yeah.
in the NFL. They played them close. It took them to overtime. And so then you think like, oh, okay, like the Titans need to win this game. They're at home in order to try to,
Mm-hmm.
stay ahead of the AFC South. And then the Texans go into Nashville and get a dub against the Titans. And so am I
They
willing to
were
bet against
trailing
the
in the fourth
Texans
quarter of that
now?
game, too.
Right?
That was
Yeah.
And
impressive.
so am I willing to bet against the Texans playing at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars team who's been playing better as of late, but as we've said a number of occasions throughout the year that there's a lot of parity in the NFL and each team could get beat on any given Sunday. And then you combine that with these two teams being divisional rivalries as well, like this is probably a stay away from me, just given those little nuggets. Like for some reason, Pep Hamilton, I give him a lot of credit because Brandon Cooks hasn't played a lot. They've been injured all along at wide receiver. I mean, their star running back, Damian Pierce, he's on IR. Yet the Texans are playing better ball now on offense and in defense than we've seen in any part of the season. And I think even though it's pretty dumb of them. Like right now, they have their pick of the number one quarterback in the draft. Yet still, they want to somehow, some way, end the season on a positive note and try to rack up all these wins. No,
Yeah.
make sure you come up with the like somehow, some way, you need to tank and make sure you get the damn first pick in the draft. But that being said, I like the job that Lovey is doing, that they bought in at least in these final games. And so, yeah, Texas need to lose, but for some reason they're not doing what they need to do. So from that standpoint, I'm staying away.
Yeah, this game is going to be really interesting too, Jared. I know we talked about it this morning on Let's Bet It. For the Jags, it doesn't matter if they win, if they lose, if they tie.
True.
They could still have a chance to win the AFC South because it all comes down to week 18 where the Jags take on the Titans. Do you think this is a spot where maybe the Jags could rest a couple of guys and not really worry about how they perform in a game like this?
Yeah, I think that might be the case. So the initial line movement here was off of Houston. It was from 5.5 down to 4. And now we've seen a little bit of buyback on Jacksonville. It's back up to 5 at Superbook. It's 4.5 most market-wide sources. I don't know what Lovie Smith is selling, but they're buying it. They are. I mean, the scenario with that Titans game, Tennessee had a 4-point lead in the fourth quarter with Derrick Henry running it down Houston's throat in their territory. Fumble, touchdown, interception, field goal. I mean, it was like I was getting ready to cash my ticket. Derrick Henry running downhill with a lead in the fourth quarter against the Texans team with nothing to play for. And somehow Houston won that game. Killed my best bet of the week. But I give a lot of credit to the Texans. Honestly, I mean, there's really nothing else to say other than they wanted that game more than Tennessee did. And they made the plays late that got them that game. I think they'll still get the number one pick regardless because I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I think they are in it. And I think the uncertainty with Jacksonville's roster, like Tank, before I get further into the handicap, if you were in this scenario and this game meant absolutely nothing to you and your overall team goals, the Jaguars can get blown out in this game by 100 points. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is beating the Titans next week. What would you want your coach? How would you want your coach to approach this game? Would you want to just backups, vanilla game plan, or is momentum a thing and you want to keep it rolling heading into next week?
I say it all the time, and I believe it's true. Momentum is a hell of a drug. But there is one caveat. If there are some guys on your team who would benefit from an extra week of rest, you make sure they get that rest. You make sure that they go into the game against the Titans, the one that matters, as close to 100% as possible. But if you have guys that feel fine, they're not banged up, and they can play, then you try to go ahead and get your guys in there, secure that
Sure.
dub, continue to build a momentum that you have late in the season, get this win against the Texans, dominate the
Yeah.
Titans, and then you go off into the playoffs hot, and then you have a chance of doing something similar to what Cincinnati did last year.
Hmm. There's a
This is going to
couple
be
of things
interesting.
then to that end. Hold on. Let me just get a couple more points in here, LJ, before we move on.
Yeah, of course.
There's a couple more things to that end because the Jaguars offense this year, first of all, Trevor Lawrence is taking the leap. Turnover worthy plays down, adjusted accuracy, big time percentage, all up year over year. Doug Peterson's done wonders for him. That's not a surprise. The reason I think they've had so much success this year is because Ingram, Jones, and Kirk, those three have combined to only miss one game all year. They've played in every single game this season. And after 15 weeks, my guess is they're probably pretty gassed. Now, they have had a long break. They played last Thursday. They had the mini bye. So I think there's some conflicting. Like originally this week, I was like, man, the Texans are such a good spot as a home dog. But now that I'm kind of talking my way through it with you fine gents and ladies, I don't know if Jacksonville is going to have the same approach that in my mind I thought of 2 days ago. Like maybe they do subscribe to the notion of, hey, we're on a long break here. Let's just keep this thing rolling. So, yeah, I think the Texans +5 is probably a decent bet based off where the market should be. But you're kind of asking for Jacksonville to throw in the white towel here. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think that's going to be the case, but I am not 100% sure that is going to be the case.
I will say the underdog.
Cam
Oh, yeah,
Robinson.
keep going.
Cam Robinson is on IR too, and so just trying to figure out how they're gonna. I mean, they may want to try to see how they're gonna situate that offensive line.
They're a top 5 unit the last 3 weeks against 3 really good offenses, not the Tennessee.
And they frustrated Patrick Mahomes a little early in that game. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Dak obviously ton of turnovers. So very weird spot situationally. I still think I like the Texans at 5. I'm probably gonna bet that, but it's not as highly of a conviction play than it was, let's say, 48 hours ago, especially after talking to you, Tank, about the motivation thing, because I do trust you.
Totally. And the underdog is 4-0 against the spread in the last 4 meetings, Jared. So the trend is definitely your friend in this spot. Dolphins taking on the Patriots. Let's head up to New England because this line is super interesting. Obviously, the Dolphins were laying 1.5. Now with the news of Tua Tagovailoa in the concussion protocol, not knowing if he's going to play this week, probably won't be playing. Teddy Bridgewater is most likely going to be under center. The Patriots are now laying 2.5. I'm seeing 3 at some books too. This is going to be a really, really interesting game because Miami has lost 4 straight. The last 3 games, they lost by 6 points or less in each one of those games. The Pats have dropped 4 of their last 5. Their last 2 have both gone down to the wire. There's no way that Tua should be playing in this game. I don't think it will. I don't think he will. They need to protect him in this spot. This is his 3rd time this season in the concussion protocol. If he can't go, Teddy Bridgewater might be a little bit rusty. Going up against the New England defense, it's given up the 5th fewest points, 8th fewest yards per game on the season. The Pats almost upset the Bengals last week. This one I feel like is going to come down to the wire. This is kind of it is a must-win spot for the Patriots. The Dolphins have a little bit of wiggle room, but I know that they want to get their momentum back on track. Tank, would you take them as an underdog in this game, knowing that probably Tua's not going to be starting under center?
This one, like, because the Patriots, to me, like, honestly, the Patriots are a bad football team. Like, and I like, if you watch that game, like the way that they were able to get into that game at the very end was crazy. I mean, like just these kind of quirky, crazy turnovers by the Cincinnati Bengals. Like Mac Jones throws up a damn prayer and it gets like volleyballed into Jacoby Myers' hands, and then he scores a touchdown, and then you have a fumble, and the Patriots have an opportunity to score late, and then they end up fumbling, and then the Bengals end up winning. So, like, there's no way the game should have been close, but somehow, some way, like there's some funky juju that goes on in Gillette Stadium that allows the Patriots to just kind of stay in games that they have no business being in. And so now, if Tua was playing, I feel like this should be a layup for the Miami Dolphins because I feel like they're a much better team, especially when you look at the offensive side of the ball, when you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and all those guys. But now with Teddy Bridgewater, I think he can still be efficient with that offense. He's shown the capability of moving the ball. But that New England defense, if there's one good thing about the Patriots, is that that's their game breaker. Like a lot of teams, like
Yeah.
say for example the Dolphins game breaker, that's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they have Travis Kelce. If you look at the Buffalo Bills, they have Stephon Diggs. New England doesn't have that on offense. But what they do have is Uche and they have Judon, and those dudes are some beasts coming off the edge. And so those are their game breakers, and I believe that they can probably wreak some havoc. I mean, the one thing that you can just look to is to been a concussion protocol a number of times already this season. It's not like he's getting beat up as much as Joe Burrow and some of these other guys, but one thing you can say is that, hey, he gets hit on a few occasions that allows him to be vulnerable. Teddy Bridgewater, he missed a game or two due to the concussion. So, I mean, do you think that the New England Patriots can possibly get some pressure on the Miami Dolphins, on Teddy Bridgewater, throw that offense off track? Like, yeah. So, in that instance, this ends up being a stay away game for me because I feel like the New England Patriots defense playing at home can be an X factor to where they can just keep this game close without Tua and without Miami's offense being at full strength. And so this is one that I don't even want to touch.
Yeah, this game, I don't know how to predict this game, to be honest with you. I kind of like the under. It was at 43.5. Now it's ticked down a little bit to 42, but you look at the
Yeah, that could
Patriots,
be a good
they've
play for
scored
sure.
less than 20 points in 3 of their last 6 games. Miami, they're offensively averaging only 20.8 points per game during this 4-game skid. Jared, how do you approach this game, not knowing if it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater, if it's going to be Tua? This line is extremely volatile at this point.
I am about as sure as I can be on anything that it's going to be Bridgewater this week. You can't put Tua out.
I think they already announced it. They already announced Bridgewater.
Yeah,
they did 100%.
The Tua,
yeah,
yeah,
I think
you
Schefter
can't
announced
put
it.
Tua.
Bridgewater.
I didn't see an official announcement, but
Let me confirm.
If he had a concussion, I think it's his third concussion of the season. Or maybe one of them was
his third time
like
in protocol, technically his 4th concussion because he had the one and then the week after he's back in. So it's probably his 3rd or 4th this season.
I don't know. Yeah, the over on Tua concussions cap this year. Let's just leave it at that. And that is not a good recipe.
They said Mike McDaniel told reporters that Tua did in fact suffer concussion. Teddy Bridgewater is in line to start at New England, but I guess it hasn't been like officially confirmed. But more than likely, it's going to be.
And the market is kind of telling you that it's been confirmed. I'm seeing this line at 3 now. And I'll be honest, at 3, I kind of like the Dolphins. You're telling me that the drop-off from Tua to Teddy Bridgewater, who, oh, by the way, is 26-9 against the spread in his career as an underdog. You're telling me the drop-off is 6 points? It's 5.5, basically. The Dolphins open as a 2.5-point favorite in this game. And now they're a 3-point underdog. And the total has dropped 2 points. So the value of those points has increased since the move has been made. I think the Dolphins at 3 might be my new best bet of the week. I'm not even joking. And I think it's because of Teddy's experience in these spots. Like maybe this is exactly what Miami needs right now, which is an experienced quarterback to come in and just run Mike McDaniel's scheme. Now, the issue that I see on the other side, unlike other teams that are in the playoff hunt, the Dolphins' defense is atrocious. And they've struggled at times this year. You saw them struggle against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers on Sunday, and they have not been able to defend the pass really well. Well, good news. You're facing a quarterback this week that is very much, and really an offense, frankly. The offensive play calling situation with New England is a bigger disaster than who's on the field. You have Matt Patricia calling plays for this offense. I mean, that is just not going to get it done in this day and age, which is all about innovation and, being able to out-scheme, out-fox, out-flank your opponents.
Right.
The defensive schemes have been pretty good against Mac Jones this year. And besides that, if that pick 6 doesn't happen where Jamar Chase just, inexplicably ran kind of a bad route and Burrow thought he was going out and he went in and the defensive back was literally sitting right there, ran it back for a touchdown, and that kind of started the snowball effect of New England coming back in that game. I mean, that game's a blowout, and we're not even talking about New England in any respectful way this week, keeping that game close and battling Cincinnati to final tooth and nail. So I think Miami at 3 is a bet for me, and I'm not overly excited about it, but I will say this. The Patriots defense, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. 13th in EPA per play during that stretch. Weeks 1 through 11, they were first in that category. So say what you want about Mac Jones on the offense. We've seen the defense significantly take a dip in production over the last 5 weeks during this recent down stretch. So I think at 3, Miami's a play, and I think maybe Teddy's kind of the right man for the job in this spot.
Yeah, I'm so interested to see, how the Dolphins are going to be with Teddy Bridgewater. I do like that stat though, the fact that what was it? You said he's 26-9 against the spread as an underdog in his career?
Now, none of those games have come with Miami. They've all come with Detroit or Denver and Carolina. But again, it kind of speaks to who Teddy is, the quarterback. Like a lot of those were as a backup too, when he came in relief of other guys. So it is an intriguing spot, I think, for Miami. I mean, again, this is basically the season for both teams. I don't think the loser of this game, maybe Miami still has a chance, but I don't think the loser of this game is going to make the playoffs. So does Teddy save the season for the Dolphins? That would be some story, right?
The drama. There's also been a lot of drama in the NFC South. What team is going to win? No one still knows at this point, but it's probably going to be the Panthers or the Bucs who are going head to head this week in an NFC South division rivalry game that has so much at stake. As I just bolster this game up so much, the Bucs here laying 3 points. That total is set at 39. This one might bring us a step closer to knowing the answer to that question. The Panthers showed out against the Lions. They won 37-23. The Bucs won barely over the Cardinals, 19-16 win. The Bucs lost to Carolina earlier in the season. They're going to be motivated for this one. Carolina has been really bad on the road, 1-5 straight up on the road this season. Tank, when you look at this one, how the Panthers played last week, especially with their run game, can you see them taking advantage of the Bucs in Tampa Bay, or is Tom Brady just the Tom Brady that we know and he gets it done in crunch time?
See, that's one thing that kind of annoyed me in your lead up. You said that the Bucks got beat by Carolina in Carolina earlier this year, so you know they're going to be motivated. Are they?
I
Like
don't
we
know.
just keep giving Tampa Bay excuses the entire year. I mean, Jay, can you think back? I can't remember what week it was. It's probably like week 4 or 5 when you're like, hey, like this is Tom Brady. Like they're playing at home. They lost one game, and so like this is
Yeah.
where they get back on track.
It
And I
was
was like,
against
hell yeah,
Atlanta.
like I'm with you. It's like if there's gonna be one game where you can bet on the Bucks, like I think they were like favorite -14 or something like this is the game. And so man, like they and like in that time frame, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers have gone from like the bottom depths of the toilet bowl and have like come back up and risen. And now Christian Watson is like this game changer. And now the running game is going. They're healthy. They're trending on their way, possibly playoffs. And we still talking about the same dumb shit with the Bucks, man. So like, really? Like, so can we really count on the Bucks to do anything? Like, honestly, like if you just kind of go back and remove like Tom Brady being the GOAT and all that stuff, and all these players
Yeah.
that have performed well for the Bucks in prior years, and just look at, okay, what have you done for me lately? Look at the Panthers and some of the games that they've had over the past month or so. Look at the Bucks and some of the games they've had over the past month or so. Like explosive games where you like have Foreman running for like over 100 something yards, Hubbard running for over 100 something yards, like DJ Moore having a breakout receiving game. Like, have we seen anything like that from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Like, hell no. Like, there's been games where they should have lost, and the Saints give them a damn layup where they give up like some dumb big play at the end of the game and then give Brady the ball at the end, and then like somehow, some way he gets it in the end zone just because you're that damn bad. But like other than that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers haven't given us anything to believe in. So now all of a sudden, like Brady's just like, could he? Could he just end up channeling the Tommy Boy of old and then just racking up points and like throwing deep passes to Julio and Mike Evans? Like he could, but there's nothing that's gonna make me believe it until I see it. So this game just honestly it disgusts me. And so I want zero parts of this game, any of the action. I don't even know if I want to watch it. I think I just want to see like the box score at the very end, see the highlights, and be like, okay, this is the team that's gonna make it to the playoffs, and then just do like some due diligence and try to figure out how they're gonna match up against whoever they end up playing against. More than likely the Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs. Like I have no damn interest in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that game earlier in the season that Carolina won. They combined for 24 points in that game. Neither offenses were rolling. It was just ugly. It was gross, Jared.
That's when Mike Evans dropped the touchdown. If Mike
Yes.
Evans catches that ball, the whole season may be different. He drops that ball, and the Bucks have been shitty ever since.
Yep.
Just because Mike Evans dropped the ball, the Bucks have shit the bed all season long. I'm glad that we got that one out there, Jared. Who do you think takes advantage in this one? Because NFC South, it's hanging in the realm. They just have to win the game to grab it. But as we know from both of these teams, they tend to drop the ball when they're supposed to catch it. Mike Evans.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the box score now. It was the first drive of the game, 1st and 10 after a first at the Bucks 36-yard line. Tom Brady pass incomplete deep to M. Evans. They ended up punting in the game, and they did not score a touchdown in the game. They didn't even score, period, until the fourth quarter. They lost the game 21-3. The other instance Tank was referring to was in week 5, after the Bucks lost back-to-back games to the Packers in a close game, and then they got blown out by the Chiefs. My best bet that week was Bucks, I think, laying 7 at home against Atlanta. And they had a 21-0 lead in the fourth quarter. And they let the Falcons score 15 unanswered in the fourth quarter. And they won the game, but did not cover the spread. And that was also the Grady Jarrett.
They should have lost.
Right. That was the Grady Jarrett he got called for. So, honestly, imagine if the Bucks would have lost that game. Would have been. So the scenarios here is Carolina needs to win out. They need to win this game, and they need to win next week. The Bucks just need to win this week, and they're in. They clinched the division. Now, the line movement here was fascinating. When I went to bed Christmas Day, Sunday night, after the Bucks, and let's be honest, what did I say last week? If Tom Brady loses to Trace McSorley, he should retire on the field. He almost did. And I was watching that game over at the M, shooting craps with one of my buddies, one of the best crap dealers that I've ever met. He works over at the M. He's a fantastic crap dealer. I'm sitting there, I'm telling him, like, I told everyone on my show this week that if Tom Brady retires, he should retire. I mean, if Tom Brady loses a game, he should retire. And there was a moment when I was literally about to, like, tweet out, Tom should retire. And I was like, let's just wait and see this game play out. And Tom comes back and wins, and crisis averted. But I go to bed that night after that game. This line was 6.5. I wake up in the morning and it's 3. And there's no quarterback injury that put a line moving 3.5 points overnight. What do we just see with the Raiders line? The quarterback. So I'm thinking to myself, I called every person that I know in the like, is Tom Brady hurt? Like what's going on? No, just the market woke up and realized that they were massively overvalued. So maybe, and it's ironic because the Bucs are the worst team against the spread in the NFL this year. But the margin of victory is so low that it's obvious that the books haven't fully caught up to where these aging quarterbacks, I'll throw Stafford in the mix too. The books didn't catch up to him until he got hurt. So maybe the priors on these quarterbacks just aren't right. And finally, a 3.5 point move overnight is, I mean, maybe the sports books just tweaked the algorithm on where they think Tom Brady is at this point in his career. And all of a sudden, you're seeing Carolina now a 3-point dog. I don't think there's any value with Carolina as a 3-point road underdog. I mean, they're a road underdog, only catching 3. I mean, that's telling me that Tampa Bay's barely favored on a neutral. That's wild to me, considering where these teams, started their seasons and where they are now. So, I mean, listen, Carolina's been playing well since Steve Wilkes. They're 5-5. They're a top 20 offense, top 15 defense, and the Bucs have the lowest explosive pass and explosive run rate in the NFL this year. They are the worst team in the league at getting 15-yard explosive pass, 15-yard pass plays, explosive runs, 10 yards all season. Every team in the league, they have freaking Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans. They are the worst explosive offense in the NFL. There is no explanation for that at all, other than just Tom Brady's falling off the map. I don't know what other explanation
Josh McDaniels, bitches, Derek Carr, Jarrett Stidham will start rest of season.
Yeah.
Wow. Good to know. That is
right.
Wild. Yep. Well,
lots of fun things happening in the NFL today. So to finish, to tie ball on this game, I think Carolina wins, but at 3, it's not a good bet. You might as well just bet the money line. But yeah, Carolina's playing better right now, so I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Carolina possibly going to win the NFC South. This one might come down to Week 18, the wire. You love to see it. Love the drama in the NFL the last 2 weeks. No drama here, but just 2 teams that are playing really well. The Vikings extremely lucky. The Packers getting back on the right track. This game's going to be played at Lambeau. The Packers laying 3.5 points against the Minnesota Vikings as the Vikings look to keep hold of that NFC number 2 seed. They beat the Giants last week in overtime. Justin Jefferson is that dude, guys. 133 yards, 1 touchdown, 12 catches. The Packers upset Miami in week 16. Their defense, for the most part, got the job done. They forced 3 interceptions from Tua, which gave the team great field position. They were able to take advantage. A few weeks ago, you'd think this game would be a blowout, that the Vikings were going to blow out the Packers. I'm not so sure anymore. The Packers have won 3 straight games. They've been playing really, really well. Home field advantage, cold at Lambeau. Might not be as much of an advantage, though, Tank, because Minnesota, it's cold as hell there, too, right? But Minnesota also won 4 of their last 5 road games and won 11 one-score games on the year, which if you would have asked me and Jared, the statistical guy, if a team can win 11 one-score games in one season, you'd be like, hell no, there's no chance.
No chance.
They're still hanging on by a thread. It's crazy. Tank, do you think that Minnesota could take advantage here in this spot against the Green Bay Packers? Because it seems like the easy thing to do is take the points with the Vikings, but the Packers played really well.
Honestly, like I wouldn't bet it, but I like the Packers.
Yeah.
I like the Packers. We've come a long way from the middle of the season where I was just talking that hot cash about the Green Bay Packers, and
Yeah.
honestly, everything that I said was valid because they were playing shitty ball, and I don't know why Vegas was just hung up on Aaron Rodgers being the MVP and all that, and so it took a while for them to correct, but then they finally did. But now the Green Bay Packers have actually corrected some things within their scheme on offense and defense. And now they're playing solid ball. As we talked about, the defense is playing better. I wish the offense was at full strength. We'll see where Christian Watson is once his kickoff. I know he's dealing with a hip injury and that he hasn't been ruled out for this game. We'll see how his practice reps are throughout this week. I would like for him to be in this matchup just to add that explosive take off the top of the defense because, I mean, when you're talking about the Minnesota Vikings defense, I mean, they're just known for giving up explosive pass plays on defense. And so I would like to have that element in Aaron Rodgers' arsenal. The weather's not going to be too bad. I was looking last night. I think the weather's going to probably be in like the 30s or something like that, which is fine. And so it's not going to be that windy. So I would imagine both teams should be able to move the ball effectively. I really like this total when it was at, like, when I first took my notes, it was 46.5, and I was over all day. I mean, now it's at 48.5. Probably still like the over, but like whenever I see a line move like that, I'm like, I don't want to get caught chasing. But I really liked it at 46.5. Who wins this game? Like I said, I mean, I wouldn't bet it. I think Green Bay does. I like the over at 46.5. I think I'll let Jared get into his data dump, but that's just kind of where I stand right now. I think this is going to be a really good game, and I think everybody's just been waiting for the wheels to fall off on the Vikings. I'm not sure if it's going to be a nasty game like Dallas just blowing them out. I think this is competitive because it's a divisional matchup, but I think Green Bay wins.
I feel like everyone's kind of been waiting for the wheels to fall off the Vikings, and they just keep winning those one-score games, which is wild. And Jared, statistically, what are the chances of that actually happening in a season?
It's a lot. It's long, right? It's like flipping a coin 10 times and having it come the same tails or heads or tails all 10 times or 11 times.
11 times.
Yeah, it's not probable. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not that smart where I can do that math in my head. But I do think it's probably one of the more outlier seasons in NFL history. I mean, here you go. Here's some data for you. The Vikings are 12-3, but they're just a +5 point differential. And they rank outside of the top 19 in every analytical category. Total DVOA, offensive DVOA, defensive DVOA. For perspective, and this was a tweet I believe one of the analytical guys for Pro Football Focus sent out earlier this week. Their offense is less efficient than the Steelers, Bucks, Raiders, and Giants. And when I name those 4 offenses, they don't really strike fear into your heart, right? Their defense is less efficient than the Texans, Titans, and Dolphins. And again, maybe one playoff team in that entire bunch that I just named you. Mm-hmm. So they're not playing like a playoff team. And they're definitely not playing like a team that has a chance to be the number 2 seed in their respective conference.
Crazy.
It is mind-boggling how they have strung together these wins, but they have strung together these wins. So you have to at least give them some credit for their, I guess, just the ability to overcome adversity and win these games. The Packers are starting to play really well. The nerd numbers are starting to show me that they're an efficient offense. Since week 14, 10th in EPA per play on offense, and their defense is 8th in efficiency with a success rate allowed of under 40%. So I don't really have any, even earlier in the year when Rodgers was struggling and he, the thumb was a little banged up and the receivers looked young. And I still said, all of those things are working against them. Let's see what happens later in the year. It was always the defense that I thought was holding them back the most. Well, now their defense over the last 3 weeks during this little winning streak, playing better than their offense. And I give Joe Barry a ton of credit. Made the adjustments at half. Tua and the Dolphins, 0 points in the second half of that game on Sunday. That's impressive. And
Which
Joe Barry's not a guy that
concussion too. Could
have been 100%, absolutely. But it also could have just been some adjustments. I don't know how, I don't know how much the concussion affected Tua in the second half of that game, but that is a very, very valid point. Christian Watson being day-to-day is the one injury to keep an eye on this week. Did not practice Wednesday. We'll see what he does later in the week. Obviously a massive, massive piece. He's playing right now like a top 10 receiver. He's really starting to show flashes of why the Packers invested in him during the draft. And the one thing I really like about Green Bay, even without David Bakhtiari, their offensive line is playing like a top 5 unit. And they're going to need it because Zadarius Smith and this Vikings defensive line is the one strength of their defense. They're really bad in the secondary, but up front, they can get after you a little bit, and they're decent against the run. So that's the matchup to keep an eye on here. The Packers offensive line against that Vikings front, which has some pieces that can scare you. And if Aaron Rodgers keeps playing as well as he's played over the last month, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Green Bay wins this game. And I feel pretty confident about them making the playoffs, which, by the way, you can still bet that at around plus 186-ish, around 2-1. So that – I haven't done the math about what's the better bet to make, bet them this week and then roll it over on the money line or bet the playoff bet. I'll do that math later this week, but I think the Packers to make the playoffs a decent bet right now too.
Yeah.
So
Packers,
the key to this
Lions.
game, you're saying is this. Yeah. As long as we don't see Aaron Rodgers saying, Lord, if you're listening, hell, then they have a pretty good chance at winning. We spend it all the way back to week 1.
I think Aaron Rodgers is – I think Aaron Rodgers, and we talked about it last week, he's got that shit-eating grin on his face, and he loves the haters, and he loves when people doubt him, and he loves when people view him like he has no – like, to me, the worst-case scenario for every other team in the NFC was how the scenario played out for Green Bay this year. I mean, people forget, they were the favorite to win the NFC preseason, but you look at what they are as a team and you're like, yeah, forget about them. They're done. Like that's arguably the worst case scenario for every other team in the NFC. And it happened all year, us included. And now it ain't going to happen anymore. That's for sure.
That's definitely for sure. Okay, we have one more key divisional game to get into before Monday Night Football and then our best bets. The Steelers heading on into Baltimore, taking on the Ravens. The Ravens laying a field goal here. That total is set at 36. We got Sunday Night Football, baby. The Steelers have won 4 of their last 5 games, including Week 16 against the Raiders. The Ravens bounced back with a win over the Falcons. The defense looked really good. Roquan Smith had 15 total tackles, 7 solo tackles, which phenomenal game for him. It's still early to know 100% if Lamar Jackson is going to be back under center with his knee injury, but they beat the Steelers without him in Week 14. Tyler Huntley was under center. Either way, the team should be able to do that again. I know Pittsburgh has won 3 straight road games, but there were wins against the Panthers, the Falcons, the Colts, sub-500 teams. The Steelers are 0-4 straight up on the road against teams with a winning record. Tank, do you think that trend continues? The Ravens get a win regardless of who's under center, or can Steelers maybe sneak another one out?
I believe there's a chance for the Steelers to sneak one out. I mean, this is another game. The Steelers are playing decent, motivated ball right now. I mean, given they were playing against the Raiders last week, Pinnock was Pickett was serviceable, 244 pass yards. He had a tub and a pick. I believe the usage of Najee was cool. He had like
Hmm.
53 rush yards. He had 42 receiving yards, so balanced. George Pickens got a late touchdown. Deontay Johnson was involved. Pat Fryermuth was involved. The defense made enough plays to win the game. And if you're looking at a Baltimore Ravens team with Tyler Huntley, they got the win, so they end up clinching a playoff berth last week. But it's not like it was like overly impressive against Atlanta. It's not like they blew Atlanta out. And so I think
Yeah.
Pittsburgh can look at that outcome of the game and say, hey, this is division rivalry, a team that we normally know how to play close, a team that we've beaten on a number of occasions. Like, yeah, we can push them to the limit at the end. And so I think that if Lamar is healthy and he comes back and plays, then it's enough of a X factor to where like I would give Baltimore like a significant bump. Because not only is he
Mm.
just a much better player than Tyler Huntley, it's like that Taylor Heineke effect that we talked about in Washington, but then you
Hmm.
just amplify that like 3, 5, 10x with Lamar just because he has that invisible juice. And so he's coming back. You already guaranteed the playoffs, and now you want to get that momentum to try to secure the AFC North. And I think that could be something that would just propel that team offensively, defensively, and then you'll see a different type of Baltimore Ravens team if he's healthy and he comes back this week. But if it's just Huntley, I think there's a path for the Ravens to win, but it'll be close, it'll be sloppy, and then in that case, I would expect this to be a fairly close match between Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and something that I really want to touch. What we got? We have 30, with the number being so low too. If there's anything that you want to go with, if Lamar is not playing, is the under, and that's already pretty low. So it's probably a no touch for me.
Yeah, the total is 36. It's at extremely low. The Steelers are averaging those 17.5 points per game in their last four games, and the Ravens have averaged a whopping 11.5 points per game during their last four games. So it could go under, but that total almost might be a little too low to bet in a spot like this. Jared, what lean do you have for this Sunday night football game?
I don't have much here, to be honest with you. We just saw this game 2 weeks ago, and it was tight. It was a lot of scoring early, not much late. Game stayed under. Ravens won by 2. So, I mean, it was 30
Yeah.
points scored in the game. Total here's 35. Ravens won by 2 on the road. They're laying 2.5 at home. So, it got bought down from 3. A couple times it hit 3. And I think my guess is, based off of the movement, just looking at the screen now, Lamar's not going to play in this game. Just
Yeah.
my guess. That's just a market. That's just a market read. And if he does, I think the Ravens probably go up to maybe a touchdown favorite. I mean, we've seen about 4 or 5 points given between Jackson and Huntley this year. So this line will move considerably over the next 48 to 72 hours, Friday to Sunday, if Lamar Jackson does play. He didn't practice Wednesday. Again, we're recording this on Wednesday. We just don't know. And we're not going to know probably until Friday or Saturday at the absolute earliest. So keep an eye on that, because most quarterbacks will move the line significantly. We just saw it with Jarrett Stidham and Derek Carr, and this one's no exception. So I think I feel, I don't know, I think I feel better about this game from a betting perspective with the Ravens under a field goal with Huntley than I do with the Ravens over, a touchdown with Jackson, because it'll be Lamar's first game back in a month, 2 months. He hasn't played much. He's been a little banged up this year already, and he hasn't been that accurate even when he was healthy. So I think at 2.5, 3, I'd feel better about betting the Ravens with Huntley than I would at 7 or 7.5 or 8 with Jackson. But we'll see how this line shakes out. But I don't have a bet here. I don't have an angle here. I think the scenario, if the Ravens lose this game, I think the Bengals can win the division Monday night with a win. So, kind of keep that in mind for how it'll affect the market from Sunday night into Monday. But maybe I'll feel differently on Sunday when we do our show, Lauren, but I don't have anything for you right now on this game.
Would you just look at that transition that you set up so perfectly for me? Let's head on out to the Monday night football game in Cincinnati, where the Bills are going to be eating Skyline chili and hopefully taking advantage of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bills are laying 1.5 points at this spot. The total is set at 49.5. And this is the Monday Night Football game that we are all looking forward to. And I know especially Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are looking forward to because they've had some shitty games to call on Monday night this season. They deserve this one. They deserve this one. We as fans deserve this one. The Bills have won 6 in a row now. They had a blowout win in Week 16 over the Bears. The Bengals have won 7 straight games. They've also won 9 of their last 10. The Bills right now averaging 25.8 points on the road this season, which is 5th in the NFL. 392.8 total yards, which is 3rd in the NFL. Buffalo has also been holding opponents to 37.9% third down conversion percentage, which is wild. And the Bengals have been similar. They're holding opposition to just under 40% in the same. I know Joe Burrow, the O-line, has stepped up mightily this season. This is going to be a really big challenge because the Bills have 39 sacks on the season. And Jared, who's the biggest injury to the Bengals for the rest of the season? Hit me with it.
Wow, Collins.
Lyle Collins. That's going to be a big one here for the Bengals. Tank, who wins?
I mean, the past few weeks, I've been saying that the Cincinnati Bengals have been playing some of the best football out of any team in the NFL.
Yeah.
We know the one issue that the Bengals have had when they've struggled throughout this year has been with the offensive line, Joe Burrow being harassed. And now that you lose Lyle Collins, trying to see how they're going to have to mismatch that offensive line and see how they're going to be able to perform against a good Buffalo Bills defense. I mean, obviously Buffalo would like to have Von Miller in this situation, but they've still been able to pressure some quarterbacks even without Von. So I think this is going to be a good test for both teams. I think that one thing I want to see out of this game is an over. I see it at 49.5. I mean, I think everybody watching this game on Monday Night Football will want to see over because that means that we get to see both of these offenses at their best, at their peak. When you have Stephon Diggs, one of the better wide receivers, going head to head with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And so that's what we want to see. Hopefully we get that. But as far as who's going to win this game, like, I have no clue, actually. I have no clue. I think if Cincinnati continues to play ball the way that they have, and they don't have some of the key turnovers and mishaps that they did against the New England Patriots, and they have the benefit of playing at home, somehow, some way, they should win this game just because they've proven to me throughout the season that when you play against the Tennessee Titans on the road and the game that people expect the Titans to somehow find a way to win and you beat them on the road, and then you play against the Kansas City Chiefs team that you beat twice last year, and you feel like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have been playing some of the better ball in the league and that they should be able to find a way to get a win in Cincinnati, yet and still you come away with that win. And so it seems like every time Cincinnati faces like these matches where you can have a narrative to where this team should be able to go win. And like if you look at Buffalo, we talked about it coming into this season. They were just kind of checking off boxes of all these teams that kind of messed them up last year, whether it was like losing to the Chiefs in the playoffs or the way the Titans like demoralized them last year, or losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the first game of the season. And they kept checking off all these boxes. And I think this may be a box for the Buffalo Bills, saying that if we want to be the team that we feel we're destined to be, secure that number one seed, set ourselves up for not only making it to the Super Bowl, but finally winning the Super Bowl. This is a game that we need to win in prime time to show people that we are the number one team in the AFC. So I think that there's a lot of pressure on the Buffalo Bills, honestly. Like if you want to look at it from that perspective, like which team has more pressure on them? You have Cincinnati dealing with a significant injury. You have the Buffalo Bills dealing with the pressure, losing in the playoffs, have everything in front of them right now and can secure the home field. I believe there's pressure on Buffalo. Like,
It's good.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who wins. I don't know who wins.
Jared, do you have a lean? Who do you think wins this game?
I think Buffalo wins this game. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the moment for them where they get to show everyone, hey, we're the best team in the NFL. Because right now everyone's talking about the Bengals being the best team in the NFL. Not a lot of people talking about the Bills over the last few weeks. You know, they kind of been taking care of their business in kind of nondescript ways, not covering a lot of big spreads. I know they covered against the Bears last week, but again, not really the high profile games over the last month or so, whereas Cincinnati just keeps knocking teams off left and right. They go to New England, get a win over Bill Belichick. They beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs where they were down in the second half. Now they face Buffalo. And what have we seen from the market over the last couple of months with this Bengals team. They keep covering, and the market keeps getting stretched. They almost got tripped up last week. They almost had, and to me, the biggest indicator of the market becoming stretched on a team is a win/no cover. The Bengals were 3.5-point favorites on the road last week in New England. They won that game by 4. Right there. I mean, I think we are on the edge of the cliff of where this Bengals team has now continued to win and continued to move the market in their favor. And I think this is, I mean, listen, this is the Buffalo Bills we're talking about here. I mean, let me go back and look at what this line was during the offseason. It was Bills minus 2.5. All right, so it wasn't that big of a difference compared to what we're seeing now. But I saw this line get bet down to 1 earlier this week. So there is money for Cincinnati continuing as a home underdog. And my guess is the public will eat it up. Hey, Bengals home dog. Hey, Burrow, Burr. I'm assuming that's going to be the narrative this week. I'm assuming a lot of teasers will be tied to Cincinnati this week, getting them through 3 and up to 7. And I just think this is the game where Joe Burrow maybe finally has that one game where it's, okay, maybe we're not quite at that point yet. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think that I'm still very high on this team long term, but I'm definitely less high on them now than I was last week prior to the Lyle Collins injury. I mean, that's it. Like, you're talking about your right tackle the week, 2 weeks before the playoffs on an offensive line that already has had struggles keeping Joe upright. I don't think they're going to win a playoff game this year like they did last year where Joe got sacked 9 times. I think if that happens this postseason, the coin flip might go tails instead of heads against Joe. So I think this is the game for Buffalo. I honestly do. And also, you get that final motivational factor where if they win this game, they are the number 1 seed. They clinch the bye. And they're basically effectively on a 3-week vacation until the divisional round, which is the 3rd week in January. So, yeah, this is kind of the final straw, I think, for Buffalo's season to prove they're the best team in the AFC. I think they roll into Cincy. I think they get a win.
This one is going to be so much fun to watch and the perfect way to put a bow on week 17. All right, we're about to get into our best bets, but first, let's bet it, presented by Superbook Sports. Make sure to go to superbook.com or download the app today. And this season, guys, we are all rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Make sure to visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. All right, guys, our best bets. Let's hit it. Tank, you first. Who you got?
So, like I mentioned during the show, initially, my favorite bet that I saw was Minnesota at Green Bay at 46.5. I really like the over in that one, but now that it's gotten betting up to 48.5, like it could be okay. I'm not sure if I want to chase that, but I will say what my best bet is. It isn't out yet, but it's probably going to be Justin Fields. His rushing prop has been around that 74.5 number, something like that. As soon as his rushing prop comes out, jump on that shit because trust me, it's gonna get bet up because hey, they're gonna push, like Jared said, they're gonna push for him to try to get that record over Lamar. I can't think of a better team for him to go ahead and push that record. He may go ahead and get it against the Detroit Lions this week. So whenever you see that Justin Fields rushing
All
prop come
right.
out, make sure you hop on that thing immediately.
Love it.
My bad,
Love
LJ.
It's okay. Hey, it's all love. It's all love. Jared, your best bet, week 17. Who you got?
Yeah, I kind of flip-flopped here. I'm sorry to Kyle for doing this to him, but I have to pick the Bills. I just talked myself into the Bills as we just were doing that segment right there. I think I know. I'm gonna make you guys wait till Monday night. The other candidate was the Texans at 5, and I think that like I'm writing up the Texans for Pickswise.com this week. It'll be pretty much the next thing I do right after I get off this show is write up about 3 hours worth of columns, but that's because I love you guys so much. I'm willing to do it. But I, not you, Lauren, the audience, but yes. You're not reading my column every week. Come on.
Not you.
But I think there's a vibe to this Bills game that just really puts me in a positive mood. about where they are as a team right now, because they're still, I think, offense, defense, special teams, like top to bottom, nose to toes. I think it's fair to call them the best team in the league. I know Cincinnati has kind of made that push over the last month, and I think they're right there too. But I think the Lyle Collins injury kind of takes them down just a notch.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get the Bills at arguably their cheapest price of the season against the Bengals team that maybe have finally reached the end of this ATS streak, which has been an impressive streak. I just looked it up while we were doing this last spot. In the last 2 seasons combined with the postseason, they're 26-10 against the spread. I mean, this is a prolonged period of 70% success rate against the number. The spread was designed for that not to happen. So this has been an impressive run for this Bengals team. But again, the market always catches up with you, and it almost caught up with them last week. What do we say about a good handicap when it doesn't quite get there, but it's still a good handicap? You go back to it the next week, and I do think we're going to see the Bengals drop a game against the spread before the end of the regular season. I hope it's this week and not next week against Baltimore, because I have that Bengals 3-1 ticket to win the AFC North. But let's hope it's this week and Buffalo comes in, they wipe the floor with Cincinnati, and then we'll hop back on the Bengals next week against the Ravens. But I do think this is going to be arguably one of the most hyped games, certainly of Monday night schedule, but maybe the entire NFL schedule with these two teams. Could be an AFC Championship preview. I've got my popcorn ready, but I do think this is a good spot for the Bills considering where their results have been over the last month. A little bit under the radar, whereas the Bengals have basically been the entire radar. So I'll lay it 1 point with Buffalo.
Hashtag hype. That's it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Tank Williams, Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. We'll see you guys next week for Week 18, final week of the regular season. Until then, this is Pickswise Playbook presented by Superbook Sports.